The worst part about a long day at the mine is having to wait for all of your ores to smelt after you get home. Fortunately, with my new invention, this is a lot less of a wait. Alright, I just smelted about 152 items and it took me 28 seconds. Alright, so as you can see, this is a modification of my original blast furnace design. This time, however, I am utilizing the new blast furnaces that were actually added to the game by Mojang. This would also work if you use the cooker block. You could use animal meat instead, or the smoker block, sorry, instead of ore. There are a few notable differences between this design and my previous design. Some of the main ones is that it uses about half as many hoppers and half as many furnaces. It is overall a lot simpler and smaller to build. It is also significantly faster. It will work for any amount of input items in this minecart here. You can put in 10 sets of items and it will continue to loop around. Right here I have a switch that detects whenever the fuel loading minecart or the ore loading minecart is empty. Whenever it is empty, it will return to the station. And down on the bottom, I have comparators coming out of the first and last hoppers, which will essentially continue the bottom minecart, collect items until these do not have items in them any longer. One important process or logic that went into designing this was I wanted to make sure it was the most efficient per going around a track per item smelted. And what I mean by that is this is the first blast furnace to get loaded. It is silly to make it load any additional items until this one has finished smelting. So a 38 hopper loop is actually the perfect amount of time, so that as soon as you add, as soon as this track loads the furnace, by the time it gets back around, this will just finish smelting right as the new item comes in. This also means that it's most efficient to use multiples of 38 as you smelt items. It's of course not necessary to do that, but it will make your, it will be the most efficient way possible. Another thing is that the efficiency actually increases the more items you put in. So if you were to put in 10 sets of item or 10 sets of ore in this minecart chest, it would actually be faster as far as items per second than if you just did 32 items. And lastly, one of the best features of all is that this is entirely bamboo farm powered. As you can see over here, I have a cart that is automatically loaded and sent off. If you connect this to your bamboo farm, you're going to have an infinite amount of fuel that you will never need to restock. And it just makes for a really great, a little bit extra, but it's definitely a fun item if you have the time and the resources to build. And so we're going to get on with the tutorial. So first we're going to build the refilling minecart. This is just going to make it easier to do the rest of the work later. Go ahead and take your output chest from your bamboo farm. Go ahead and put a hopper underneath it. A block here and here. The way this is going to work is we're going to have a powered rail here, or sorry, a detector rail here and a powered rail here and here. Make sure it's going up on a slant. We're going to need to take the output from the detector rail as well as the hopper above it. From this detector rail, go up 2 comparators into a torch on a sticky piston. And then go ahead and put a fence at the end of that. What we are doing here is building a station that's going to load this minecart, and whenever it's full, or whenever there's no items in this hopper, it's going to launch it so it will automatically refill all of the furnaces. Now from over here, build a comparator going outwards, put that into a block. So if there is a block, if there is any item rather in this hopper, this will never retract, and the minecart will continue to load until it's empty. But we don't always want this, because sometimes if your minecart is full, we want to make sure that it goes automatically, and it'll probably get full quite often with the volume of bamboo you're going to have. So what we need to do is, from the lower output, go ahead and build 2 blocks to the right, dust, and a comparator. And we're going to compare this signal to a lever on 1 tick. And we need to build a sticky piston right here, so that when it's extended, it's going to pull this block away. Go ahead and put a block right coming off that comparator, and build a torch right underneath it. So whenever this has an output strong enough to overcome the comparator input here, it's going to depower this torch, it's going to retract this block, and then it doesn't matter if there's any items in the hopper, because it will launch the minecart immediately. You can go ahead and replace this with a block here. And right here is going to be where you'll have some freedom of where you actually build your blast furnace. But as you can see, if we get a minecart with a chest in it, it's going to start loading up, and it won't launch until it's full. Alright, now we're going to place our blast furnaces. You're going to want to go ahead and place an extra 2 furnaces on this side here. These will be blocks, and then you're going to place 18 off of either of those. Just like that. And go ahead and get some hoppers. For the refueling minecart, you're going to need a hopper into each one. And now to load the ore, you're going to put a hopper on top into each one. And lastly, go ahead and place a hopper as the output for each one. Now we can start placing our rails. We're going to go ahead and do the refilling minecart first. I like to start with all regular rails and then place some powered rails after. You're going to need an extra row of blocks here at the end. And then when you finally get to the end here, go ahead and build out maybe about 3 blocks here. And power that. Now we're going to place an extra 2 blocks here at the end. Put 2 powered rails here. You can just go ahead and fill this in. And right here where you're going to need 2 detector rails. And then go ahead and go up 1 block so that when it goes down, it's facing into the non-detector rail side. Okay, now it's time to power this to make sure the minecart has enough speed to get around. I think redstone blocks are the easiest. You want to make sure you don't give power to any of the hoppers, or else it's going to mess up your design. You really only need powered rails every 4 or 5 blocks. You want to have it go as fast as you can. I usually go a little bit overboard. make sure to put them on the refilling minecart track as well. Alright, now off of these two detector rails, we're going to build a circuit that will detect whenever the minecart is empty and return it back to the station. So go ahead and build a few blocks off of here. Now keep in mind the minecart's going to be going around this way. It'll be coming down. Hit this one first. We're going to put a repeater on 2 ticks into a block with a torch. Here we're going to put a comparator, a repeater on 1 tick, and some redstone dust. Now our output is going to be right here. Okay, so here it gets a little bit weird with the mechanics of how Minecraft works, especially in which direction you are facing. Now this turn right here is going to have a default position depending on which direction you're facing. It'll either be curved in like this, or it's going to look like this. Now I believe this depends on which direction you're facing. Like I said, if you are facing east and west, that is the optimal way to do it. It'll look like this, how I am right now. However, if you're facing north to south, when it's unpowered, it's going to be like this. And which means if it's facing like this, you're just going to have to invert whichever signal I use here. But since we're like this, we just need to give power to this rail right here. And remember, this is our output. We need to make this output go over here. Another problem is that we don't have any time. We can't use any repeaters because the minecart's going to be coming very fast, and we need it to turn before it gets around the whole bend. So go ahead and from this, when we do this, we need to go pretty much as down as we can and as out of the way as possible. And we only have 15 blocks to do it. Let's go make sure that works. And as you can see, the minecart, when it's empty, will go back up to the station. Whenever it's not empty, it will not go around. The bend will stay like this. Now we're going to build the minecart that picks up the items from the bottom. Go ahead and get some regular rails. And build along here. Now one thing to remember is you need to go an extra block over here. The idea of this is that we need to make sure that the top minecart giving the items to, or the items to burn, and the items being picked up are at the same rate. If one is going faster than the other, it's going to mess up the timing, and you're going to have a lot of issues to deal with there. Also, same deal, make sure you have some powered rails to keep the minecart going. Alright, now we're going to build the minecart that picks it up. We're going to be starting 2 blocks in front, or below this minecart, and 1 block in front of it. So our first track is going to be here. This will be the minecart right there. Go ahead and build down 1. Then 2 powered rails here. A turn down 1 block, and then here. Now this is going to be our pivot track right here. As you can see, if you're facing east and west, it's going to connect like this by default. This is good. Otherwise, it's going to connect like this default, and that means you're going to have to invert the signal. So what we need to do is go ahead and place a comparator output from the first furnace hopper output as well as the last. into a repeater. And what we're going to do with this signal here is drive it into our pivot block. You might need to do some restructuring here. This is a lot easier if it is a slab, so you can go underneath. Whoops, make sure that's not getting powered by any source. Probably just had better luck doing that. So the output of this should go into, make sure it's less than 15 blocks so it can reach this. And we want that exact same output on this end. Alright, so now if either of those two hoppers have an item in it, it's going to switch to a repeat track, so the minecart below is going to continuously cycle and collect items. One of the last things that we need to do is find a way to power this bottom minecart automatically whenever this one is on the track. I think the easiest way to do that is to take the output of the first detector rail. So just build under there, put some dust right there so it's activated whenever this repeater is powered. And then we kind of just need to make the output stretch all the way over here. It's not going to be clean. As long as it doesn't interfere with any of the other wires, it'll be fine. Now, not counting the 2 ticks from this repeater, you want to have about a 2-tick delay. So just make sure it doesn't interfere, and then get the signal over so that it powers right around here. At this point, we're ready to start filling in some of these blocks here. As you can see, this is easiest to put on the corner. You can just cover up as much of this nonsense as you want. I always think it looks nice to kind of cover the backs of the minecarts with blocks so that when you send the minecart out, it kind of looks a little bit nicer. I just want to point out some common areas where mistakes happen and it will cause the device not to work. The first one, make sure that the 2 blocks that these detector rails on are slab blocks. If they are full blocks, it's going to power these hoppers and they won't allow items to go into them. So 2 top slabs with 2 detectors on top. Another thing to look out for is that this block right here should be destroyed so that there's no block next to these furnaces. For whatever reason, this was preventing me from putting items into this hopper. I'm not really sure why, but another last thing to do is I would recommend stocking up all of your furnaces below with a full stack of bamboo, and then letting the refuel minecart just to load up these hoppers here, and so you're always going to have plenty of bamboo, because if you run out of bamboo, the whole thing is going to break. Alright, now let's just go ahead and make sure everything is working properly. See, we got all of our diamonds back. Alright, so that's the end of the tutorial. I hope everybody was able to follow along. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I will try to answer them. And thanks a lot for watching.